And we don't have any public comments to this meeting, but I am going to do, with my welcome, my chair report and how this last 6 months has been going and things that are concerns and that have been mentioned in other meetings and what's on the agenda today. So, quarterly update. This is my chair, kind of quarterly final type of report for the COC. And so it's positive developments while addressing all types of data and manipulation. So the intro, we've had a very successful healing and strategy retreat, which we talked about last month. And I truly believe we've had a great 6 months as the first historical lived experience chair, despite purposeful obstacles placed in the way, specifically several people admitting to be sent to tame myself and other lived experience team members. So exactly why my entire mission to end homelessness is rooted in transparency and no harm. It's all I'll ever speak before you. So I've requested executive committee meeting minutes to be included in both the HPC and lived experience meetings to be on this agenda. And as stated by the Open Meetings Act, find the ordinance, the process of unity and opportunity through the priority conversation is not had a full due process according to TOMA. And I just want to say, I'm not here to disagree with anything that's coming up within this meeting. I actually align with what was sent forth with the Unity and Opportunity Committee. So let me see. Through here. So HUD mandates and recommendations. We've addressed the issue of compensation, highlighting that we should not be paid unless mandated by HUD, while doing very heavy lifting work CLC-wide. We are finding alternatives to that, as far as like we have tomorrow. We'll be joining with, or having the vote to join with NOAA as an organization and get us organized is the lived experience cohort and program. Discuss the need to downsize the HPC. Paying lived experience should be a priority over merely reducing board members for efficiency and boards themselves. I feel like it's a way we can do so where it aligns all committees and still keeps the effectiveness of the Homeless Planning Council itself with the downsizing. It's no really real valid reasons that have been presented for the recommendations made, and it's been chased harder than any solution. Unity and Opportunity proposed changing the name of our DEI committee to align with the new administration preferences to avoid impacting 12 million needed from HUD. According to collaborative applicant OHS, I propose we conduct a comprehensive review of the DEI program to identify any gaps and areas for improvement while first changing the language. This review should include assessment of current initiatives, evaluate the effectiveness of existing DEI initiatives and their impact on our organization from our standpoint from Nashville, feedback from stakeholders. As stated above, gather input from employees, management, and other stakeholders to understand their perspectives and experiences COC-wide. Public records request to follow up on the Unified Listening Session of 2024. A lot of this information that needs to be attained should be found there from all the constituents that were heard. Benchmarking best practices, compare our DEI efforts with even new industry standards and best practices to identify potential enhancements and pivoting COC-wide, and development of an action plan, and base the findings on creating a strategic plan to address identified gaps and strengthen our DEI program. And I have more, but in just the sake of time, and I do want to address on the back we do have the code of conduct that I feel like really can take the place of that different language that we're about to speak about. And just for the sake of time, just be mindful of your comments and everything as well. We'll just go along into the attendance, which Raquel, if you can, the computer is down for the attendance. So we'll be taking the attendance. Make sure you turn on your mic when you're answering, and name if you have a conflict of interest as well. I just wanted to make sure to have my comments and statements out of the way so everybody else can have the floor when it's time. Thank you, Ms. Raquel. So myself, Kenitha Patterson, I'm here in no conflicts. Pastor Stephen Handy.
Present, conflict.
And Deidre Nicole Childress. Ms. Liz Mallard.
Present, no conflict.
Jamie Villegas. Dr. Exidria Inslee. And if I mispronounce that, excuse me, I do have a learning disability and like speech impediment. So India Panjargar.
Present, no conflict.
Okay. Drew Freeman. Diana Allen Robb.
Present, no conflict.
Michelle Southard.
Present, no conflict.
Andrea Hancock.
Present, no conflict.
Okay, hold on, let me refer to my paper for this. Meredith McLeod Jolene,
Present, no conflict.
thank you. David Langle Martin. Councilman Jordan Huffman.
Present, no conflict.
Councilwoman Courtney Johnston.
Present, no conflict.
John Rutherford.
Present, no conflict.
And Correction Councilman, apologies. Rico X, sorry.
Present, no conflict.
Adam Hansen. Ashley Horton. Lizzie Goddard. Laura Ward.
Present, no conflict.
Angie Lawless.
Present, no conflict.
Jaha Martin.
Present, no conflict.
April Calvin.
Present.
And Susie Tomey. Okay, thank you. Then our names for the month as we observe our moment of silence and remembrance of the people that were lost while experiencing homelessness. We have Yvonne DeCarlos Bostic, Jesse Whitworth, Brenda Gregory, Greg Rivers, Beth Bacon, David Harris, Brenda Taylor. And as we remember these names, if we could give a moment of silence, please. Thank you for that moment of silence. And if we could please review the February 2025 minutes and note any corrections. Okay, the only revisions I had was gonna be at, I think around the, it was new business, continuum of care funding. And I think, Lizzie Goddard named 3 resettlement agencies. I was wondering if those could be named. And also, the comment, was by Lizzie Goddard as well for cold weather shelter response. But listing no other corrections, we'll move along to, now the Office of Homeless Services Director report. April Calvin.
Good morning, everyone. A lot going on in OHS world, but I'm sure it's a lot going on across the nation. So I'm a little bit at a loss for words, but I will proceed. So just want to give an update on cold weather shelter. This is an unprecedented amount of days that cold weather shelter has ever been open. It was open 45 days this year. It started really slow. We thought we were going to have a smooth sailing kind of experience, but we caught up quick. So 45 nights of shelter. We're responsible for completing an after-action report and an upcoming season report that we present to Metro Council. We will make sure to present that to this committee as well by April's meeting. So you'll have that information in front of you. We're going to work closely with the Nashville Rescue Mission, Room in the Inn, and the Shelter Committee, and drafting the future plan as well. There's been several that's asked about the RFP for cold weather shelter. It is not ideal that Metro, little boutique of OHS, operate cold weather shelter. We have a very small staff. We put the RFP out 2 years in a row, and there was 0 takers. But we're going to put it out again this year because I feel as though there's people that expressed interest in wanting to operate the shelter. You may hear conversations of a planning study that's going on for that location in the future, and OHS has been at the table from the beginning of the planning study. They're looking at mixed use for that site, but also taking into account that Metro would need an identified emergency opportunity. So more to come on that when the plans are hammered out a little bit more. Several have asked me about the pallet shelters, and we have a small working group of multiple Metro departments and some committee members community members that are working to address some of the codes concerns, fire concerns, other preventative measures that need to take place in order to deploy these pods or pallet shelters. And we're drafting an RFP. So real soon you'll see more information as it relates to that. Other seasonal concerns, many years ago, Tornado Alley looked a little different. And Nashville is kind of on the radar for some severe weather this week, towards the end of this week. And so as we move into the spring season, we are, working with those other emergency shelter options to ensure that we have safe place for people to go into. What we know is when the night weather is nice or when it's warm, individuals typically would not utilize the cold weather shelter. Storms typically move by pretty fast, and in the past, there's been times where we've stood up a shelter and no one actually utilized it, and it was more staff there than the individuals. And also there was a time last year where if we had to move people into the shelter, it would have been in the direct path of the tornado that kind of went through North Nashville and Madison area. So it's something that we don't take lightly. We work closely with the Office of Emergency Management in making these decisions and come up with an alternative plan for those that would like to seek refuge. There's some topics that you have a newsletter in front of you that's got a lot of great information. And in that newsletter, I feel as though the collaborative applicant, it is our role to help with educating the community and having some national leaders come in to help with that education. Critical Time Intervention is a retention effort program for case management. And as we look at some of the services and skills or supportive services that are needed here in Nashville. We're looking to bring those kind of trainers or leaders in to help with strengthening that. So we had a wonderful 2-day training, 123 participants or providers attended that training. And in the end, a critical time intervention certification was achieved. Dr. Marvin Trotter helped to bring that to Nashville. So we're excited for that. You'll see some other information in here as well. The retreat, I think that our chair has talked quite a bit about. I do want to say at the back of the document, there's a lot of thanks that's given to other offices and departments that's helped with cold weather shelter. Also in your package, you have the ARPA report. The ARPA report is, we're looking to revise it a little bit as some of those programs are going offline. We want to keep that information here, and then ones that are coming on with the most recent deployment of like Hospitality Hub. They're the new vendor that will be operating the roadway in. As they're scaling up, we're really looking at seasonal concerns, their ability to scale up, and the units that are coming online based on that. So more information to come on that soon as well. So we talked a lot about temporary options. I do want to move into like some permanent options. Worked really closely with Councilman Huffman on some permanent supportive housing initiatives in Austin, Texas. Several of you all may have received information. If not, we'll make sure to send their schedule out to this committee as well, if I can get Raquel to do that. They'll be in town on Monday and Tuesday. And we have a robust schedule. We're asking them to offer some TA, some guidance. Austin brought on 1,200 units of permanent supportive housing in 1 year. And so looking at their braiding of funding stack, looking at partners that they brought to the table, exciting. Next week we'll have planning department in front of them. We'll have private landlords and developers to participate in a working group. It's going to be, thank goodness to Councilman Huffman and Council Lady Erin Evans. She's allowed us some time during Health and Safety Committee for them to be able to present. You all probably saw an article where the mayor said there is not going to be any shiny objects in this budget, right? So we have our budget meeting as an office next week, but these are some things that we would like to share with our budget analyst will be meeting with the Austin team as well. So a lot of great information there. One thing I do want to highlight as we're looking at permanent housing options, MDHA has shared with us that their voucher subsidies are at max capacity, meaning that their annual payouts exceed their annual budget at this point in time. Hopefully I said that correctly, Susie. Yeah. And so at this point in time, there are not any voucher subsidies that are made available to our community. And so we're looking at some creative solutions and monitoring budgets and looking for operating costs for permanent supportive housing, things like that, to be rolled into our budget. I do want to say we should be a little bit careful. This is a recorded meeting, and our HUD technical advisors has advised us that we should follow those executive orders. Their contract was pulled on the spot for not following some of the executive orders, which means that a lot of our HUD technical all of our HUD technical advisors actually lost their job last Friday. And so want to make sure that as we use these words on a recorded call or recorded meeting that will live on YouTube for some time, it is vitally important that we continue to look at creative solutions, but to align with the executive orders. I think bringing in $9 to $11 million to Nashville is far more important than digging our heels in. That's it for me today.
Is there any way we could get
Your mic.
Is there any way we could get a list of things that we're not supposed to mention? We don't get federal funding, so I haven't had to worry about it, and I just want to make sure I don't put my foot in my mouth.
I appreciate that, Meredith. It makes my heart sing at this point when we're talking about $9 to $11 million. There is a document that's floating around that we received from, I think, MDHA voucher group that had a list of words not to use. And I think there may be some more information that we can share as well. But when we get that information, I'll make sure that Raquel distributes it to this group as well.
All righty. So the next item is going to be collaborative applicant report. Ms. Allison Cantway.
I'm always worried I'm going to hit the wrong one and I'm going to shock the system. Meredith, to your question, there was an article that came out this weekend in the Times that showed lots of words that different federal agencies are being mindful of. So that's pretty easily accessible just by Googling it, and that's helpful.
Can you say that one more time? What was the source?
The New York Times. Yeah. All right. So as April said, we are really watching these federal changes because there have been a lot rolled out and there are more, coming every day. We have that later on in the agenda as an agenda topic, so I'm not going to get into that too deeply. But just to know that we are really following them, making sure that we are in compliance. Back in January, the HUD awards for the Continuum of Care came out. They were announced. Nashville received an award of $11.8 million, which is great. It's by far the most money we've ever gotten through the COC competition, so that's really exciting. That has been awarded, but those contracts have not gone out yet. And this is about the time that they would come out. So we're just sort of waiting to see what the timeline on that is going to be. They don't always come out at the same time. So we're just sort of watching that situation. I will say, we were tracking the YHDP grant, which had another round of funding available. I'm still watching for that. It has not been reposted, but if it is, I will certainly update y'all. We have been meeting with other agencies that receive COC funding to talk about, what this funding does for their programs, for their clients, for the community, to really build, to really fill out the narrative of what does this money do in Nashville? What would be lost if there were reductions in the COC funding? So we've had weekly meetings with all of the COC funded agencies. We've had weekly meetings with all the COC funded agencies to really talk about that. Most every agency has sent me numbers about how many clients they've served, how many leases their program supports, how many staff their program supports, how many, families, all of that sort of thing, so that we can really braid that together and as a community say, this is why these funds are completely indispensable. We also meet with COCs throughout the state. We have a meeting with them every other week, and we told them about that, and they immediately said, oh my gosh, that's a great idea. We want to do that in our COCs as well, and they plan to share that information with us so that we can sort of create a statewide narrative. So that's something that we're working on. If y'all have ideas for things that should be captured or things that you think would be really impactful, please let us know, because, we know that the funding is completely vital for our folks. It's vital for the unhoused, it's vital for our clients, and it supports a lot of staff. If funding were to be lost, some agencies would have to lay off staff immediately. So we want to do everything that we can to really put forth a robust narrative about the work that we're doing. Anybody have any questions? All right, thanks.
Thank you for that, Allison. Homeless Management Information System, that's going to be Hannah.
Hello, everybody. We are looking at our monthly report for the month of February 2025. In the month of February 2025, 3,243 people experienced homelessness in Nashville in 2,782 households. That was 228 families, which included 379 children. I finally added this, but Drew's not here today, so someone tell him. And 2,554 adult-only households. And over the past 12 months, 10,243 unique people have experienced homelessness in Nashville. Additionally, below that, we have the numbers for the Metro Cold Weather Shelter and the Nashville Rescue Mission. So in February, there were 883 people served by the Metro Cold Weather Shelter and 1,881 served by the Nashville Rescue Mission in HMIS. On the next page, of the people who were experiencing homelessness in Nashville in February, 9% were veterans, 7% were youth aged 18 to 24, 45% were experiencing chronic homelessness, and 580 or 18% were entered into HMIS in the month of February. Below that, we have the race and gender demographics. For the people who are experiencing homelessness, in February, 50% of people experiencing homelessness were Black and 40% were white, and 62% were men and 37% were women. On our housing data, 123 people were housed in the month of February. That was 83 households, 14 families that included 34 children, and 69 adult-only households. And over the past 12 months, 1,852 people have been housed in Nashville. And finally, of those people who were housed, 21% were veterans, 6% were youth aged 18 to 24, and 34% were experiencing chronic homelessness. The average length of time from entering HMIS to exiting to permanent housing in February was 184 days. We can see on the graph below that, that was up quite a bit from what the past 9 months have been, so hopefully just an aberration. The ways people were moving into housing most commonly were 16 households were housed with friends and family, 14 with rapid rehousing, and 22 with no subsidy. And the agencies who housed the most households in February were Oasis Center, Operation Stand Down, Park Center, and Room in the Inn. And then below that is the race and gender graphs again. 54% of the people who were housed were Black and 37% were white, and 58% were men and 42% were women.
Okay, you could go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Hannah, thanks again as always. Thank you for adding the days to housing chart as well. I noticed, looking at last year from March, April timeframe to May, there was a big jump, and then there was another big jump this year. Is that a correlation coming out of cold weather shelter that you have a higher number there just because of just not enough staff to go around to help track down loose ends, or can you speak to that at all?
Should I wait? Okay, we're back. A lot of drama for me to say. I do not know why after winter. There is, I noticed that as well when we made this report, so I have it down to look into. So hopefully I can get you an answer by April.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Thank you for that, Hannah. I'm terrified to touch that button. But we'll go with Raquel next for a Continuum of Care report.
All right, good morning, everyone. So you have in your packet the March Continuum of Care updates. I'm just going to pull out some highlights. One thing to keep in mind as we go into some of the conversations that are happening in the community, we do have a general membership meeting next Thursday, March 20th. I know a couple of you have reached out to make sure that you're getting the invitations. I just forwarded it to everyone just in case. So you should receive those. It is optional, but we'd really encourage you if you have the capacity to attend, especially as we navigate, federal changes and other challenges. And the other thing is that I also sent out an all chairs meeting. So we confirmed that for March 21st in the afternoon. I sent it to everyone here just in case anyone is interested in tapping in. It'd be especially great to have those on the executive committee to lean in because they'll be digging into the strategic plan, but anyone who's able to offer some time would be super helpful. A couple other things. So the Data and HMIS Oversight Committee, they'll be presenting their proposed changes to the Policies and Procedures Manual shortly, so that's coming. The Coordinated Entry Oversight Committee, they're working on finalizing their draft of the updated Policies and Procedures Manual for Coordinated Entry. They're hoping to release it for public comment next month and that it'll come here probably around May, maybe June. So just keeping that on your radar because it will be coming across your desks. And if you see it in an email, it's always helpful to get those public comments. We did have a combined meeting of the Lived Experience Cohort and the Youth Action Board to go over the document in your packet related to compensation that I know Kenitha was talking about. And, there's been ongoing conversations about exploring alternative opportunities for payment, and so more to come on that. You'll get updates on the Unity and Opportunity meetings that have been happening that I know Kenitha also alluded to. And then the last update that I want to share is that the Standards of Care Committee has been working on adding a referral section to the written standards and outlining some training expectations for providers. They're now working on drafting final language. And so if you have any suggestions, let them know. It's going to be a while before the actual full written standards get ready to be updated and presented here. But if you have any thoughts on those specific topics, they're going to be working on them the next 2 months. And I'll open up to see if there's any questions.
Just a quick question. There's a couple of committees I noticed that have a next meeting date in the past. Have they just not had a meeting set or?
No, I think some of them just are not updated. Okay. It would be the following month. So if it was the 4th Monday, and I'll update those and I can send them out. But yes. And the interesting thing about February and March is that the dates are the exact same. So if you just filled in March, that would be their meeting date. But apologies for that.
I'll use my imagination. Thank you.
Okay, no question, but I know the Lived Experience Cohort meeting tomorrow is at Lentz Public Health Center. Just to name that, is marked to be determined there. So just for the record, it's at Lentz Public Health Department. But we'll move on to the next item, which is going to be the revisions to the HMIS Policies and Procedure Manual. And we just motioned to introduce the topic. Ms. Shanley is gonna come and speak before us.
Okay, I'm terrified. What's the deal? One time.
I'm lifting mine.
Yes.
There you go.
Okay, this happened last time I was here. I cannot handle that. Hi, good morning. I'm Shanley Degnan. I'm the chair of the HMIS Oversight and Data Committee. I was here a few months ago and we went in depth through all of the revisions that our committee is making to y'all to vote on today to update our current HMIS Policies and Procedures Manual. For the sake of time and the fact that we already went in depth through, all of the changes, just as kind of a high level reminder, most of the changes that we're recommending are very minor, language changes that simply reflect reality now. It had been several years since an update had been voted on, and so things like Metro Social Services to OHS and language changes like that. Fundamentally, the main change that we're recommending is a shift in responsibility and liability of several sets of responsibilities. The last version of this document was approved when HMIS was a much smaller operation. We had less than 20 participating agencies and less than 100 users. Now we have, 50-ish participating? 47 participating agencies and several hundred users, most of which, as we know in this field, the turnover is pretty frequent. And so for that sake, or for that reason, we are recommending a shift in the responsibility of several things to participating agencies. So those agencies are the ones vetting staff. They're the ones responsible for those staff, and we felt like some of these things made more sense in those hands versus the HMIS lead entity's hands. And just for the sake of that being feasible, we're making those recommendations. So training in part will land more in the hands of the participating agencies. Responsibility about how their staff are using HMIS falls more in those hands as well. So yeah, and I don't know, there's no microphones left, but do you guys have anything you wanted to add to that? Okay. So we had a lovely spirited debate, as you remember, about one particular thing where you felt like maybe the language was a little ambiguous, and so we took the language back. This is in particular around HMIS user access. So previously, the responsibility was in the hands of the lead entity. So right now, OHS is responsible for that. Again, because of how vast our system is now, we are shifting that back to participating agencies. And so you guys felt concerned a bit about how that felt a little ambiguous. And so we went back to the committee. We went back to HUD, all the language that HUD provides for us to use as a resource. We went back to HUD technical assistance. And ultimately, we stand with what we had originally pitched, and however, taking the concern seriously and into consideration, we made some additional language changes that we feel like strengthen our ability to hold agencies responsible for who they recommend to have access. So in your packets, you will see somewhere, they're large packets, there are 3 documents that work alongside our HMIS policies and procedures manual. It is an end user agreement, so any singular person that uses HMIS has to sign this agreement. It's a legal agreement. There is a primary point of contact agreement, which is a designated individual who's usually a supervisor. Sometimes it's even higher up the ladder at an agency, and they are responsible for a long set of responsibilities, including managing who they are recommending. And then also we have a participating agency agreement who the CEO of an agency has to sign. And in all 3 of these documents, we've added language to strengthen what we are recommending for who has access to HMIS. So in all 3 of these documents, they will now verify. Guys, I need to take a sip of water. I'm really sorry. Okay, so there are 2 charges that we are most concerned with in terms of who would or wouldn't have access to HMIS, and that's identity theft and any stalking-related felony crimes. So in each of the 3 documents, these folks will now sign off to say that these folks that they're recommending have access to HMIS will not have those 2 things in their background. So the person themselves will verify, I don't have these things in my background. The point of contact will say that we have verified that by the time that we are recommending them, that we have ensured that they don't. And also the participating agency, so the CEO will verify and say, we have a process in place internally that verifies that these people won't have these two charges in their background. Whew. So, thanks, guys. Okay, so ultimately, we also looked back at all of the language that we have about monitoring these things, and we feel really good that we have legs to ensure that we can hold agencies accountable if there were to be an instance where this or any other instance of data security, training, anything had been violated according to the documents that they've all signed. Hannah, you want to add anything?
So the document already lays out different kinds of violations of the policies and procedures, minor, major, and severe, and security violations, such as recommending a user who should not have access would be a severe violation. So then there's a multitude of steps we can take there. And again, they are legal documents, so, they have some teeth, I guess. And we also added more language into the policies and procedures in this draft about, oh no, I forgot what I was gonna add. Something about that, I'm sorry.
It's okay. Okay, so I'm focusing on that obviously because that was the main thing we talked about last time. There's a lot of other really awesome updates that will bring us current and give us a lot more opportunity to make HMIS an even better system for what we need to use it for. So, hesitantly, does anyone have any questions? I'm gonna press this again, right? Okay, no, go ahead.
No, I can do it. Yeah, I did. Okay, I'm gonna do it. I did. Thank you so much. One, it's really hard to come back and be here. So I appreciate that. I totally appreciate all of the work that you've done. This is really important, and I really appreciate it. May I ask, it's a promise, it's so easy, what page is the language on that was originally?
So it is in section, hold on. Give me a second, there's 60,000 pieces of paper in front of me. And feel free, anyone who's got this. 4.1, yeah, 4.1, which is on page 9 of the Policies and Procedures Manual.
Thank you.
And you might have pointed out in the participating agency agreement.
Hopefully.
I don't have a copy, so please come say that.
Got a copy and helped write it. So on page 3, item E, under the second section of confidentiality is the new written language in the agency agreement.
Thank you.
Maybe just stay up here.
Any other questions?
I assume this has been reviewed by Metro Legal because I see the seal on here, but is there any provision or thought around frequency of checking background because situations change? So Metro employee, I've had one background check since the day I was hired. I still have a clean background, just for the record, if anybody's wondering, but the frequency at which background should be reviewed or updated.
We don't have language in there because ultimately, again, we're shifting this responsibility to each agency and how they handle hiring and firing, et cetera. And so ultimately, we're relying on them to have internal policies because they will be responsible for this in an ongoing way. There's also a clause here that gives the lead entity the right, if there were suspicion, to do their own background check and then therefore hold the agency responsible if something were uncovered that way. So it would be on each participating agency to create a set of procedures to make sure that that's happening how it needs to happen.
The expectation is that at no point should any agency allow an HMIS user who has these in their background. So whether or not they're checking off, like they're responsible for making sure they do that.
Shanley, It does say, you kind of touched on it, that the HMIS lead agency reserves the right to request a background check for any end user. Who would be ultimately responsible for the cost of that background check?
I think in that case, it would be Metro's responsibility. And they would have to create a decades-long process to get the funds, and it would be fine.
Thank you.
You may have said this already, so apologies if you did, but I see that it says that if someone has access that shouldn't, then it will immediately revoke the user's access. But what were the penalties that you said if a participating agency were to violate that?
So there's language currently, and if, again, anyone knows exactly the page, there's a set of possible outcomes for instances where a person at an agency, or if an agency has violated any of the policies and procedures, from minor to major to severe, and varying outcomes based on how that is deemed. In addition, users of HMIS and people whose information is in HMIS also have their own set of rights to file grievances. They can file that with the lead, they can file that with the oversight, or they can go directly to HUD. So there's varying levels of opportunity for people to be held accountable.
So do we know if there was a violation of this, if it would be a minor, major, severe?
Pages 6 and 7 is where that is listed, I believe, the different types of violations. And privacy and security issues are severe violations, so it would be the most serious.
Thank you.
Just another one piece, people, like whole agencies could lose their access, and often funding is wrapped up in their ability to access HMIS. So this would be very, very serious. Agencies would take this very seriously. And in the process of discussing this, we also sought the feedback of agencies. And again, like, there was great consensus with the language that we're pitching to y'all. So, yeah.
Thank you.
All righty, if there is no more discussion and or amendments, was there anything else from HMIS that we needed to hear? Okay, and I move it towards a vote to approve the HMIS revision to the policies and procedure manual to the council. I make a motion to.
Madam Chair, I'd like to move that we approve the HMIS Policies and Procedures Manual.
Second.
I'm sorry to interrupt. We also have changes on those other documents.
Okay, that's what I was asking, if it was any more from you all.
Wait, what did you say, Hannah? I don't
Oh,
think
it's
those
other
need to be
documents that
voted
need to
on.
be approved as well.
Saying yeah, to make a motion for the policy procedure and all the
Okay.
supporting documents.
All the following, all the attached documents as well.
I'll amend my motion to include those documents.
Someone needs to move to amend the pending motion because it was already seconded. And I would recommend, I believe there are 4. If someone wants to make that amendment, I've got the 4 other documents separated that should be identified for the record.
Okay, so I'll move to amend the prior motion to include the amendments to the HMIS participating agency agreement, the primary point of contact agreement, and the end user license agreement.
Second.
Thank you for that. And then for the vote, all in favor, say aye.
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 Yeah, raise of hand. Any opposed? Okay, so the motion passes for the revisions to the HMIS Policy and Procedures Manual and attached documents, each that were named. So we'll go ahead to the next new business, tracking federal changes I'm gonna go through naming all of these first. And just for the sake of time, anyone that's, I guess, speaking up for these, we'll just already have them named. So tracking federal changes, downsizing the Homeless Planning Council, strategic plan and retreat follow-up, and transition of collaborative applicant and payment of people with lived experience, which I don't know if it's anyone to speak on those matters, and we have them. Okay, you could go ahead.
So I know I talked a little bit about the federal changes. I'm sure y'all have read things in the news about federal changes. You have a document in your packet that's outlining some of them. We're having lots of conversations in committees. Lots of committee members are discussing this. We have a committee chair here to speak about it today. Derek, I don't know if you would like to share anything about executive orders generally before she speaks, but.
This overview is very well written, provides a current update of essentially where we're at. I would add, however, that though the executive orders may still remain in effect, most of these applicable ones are currently stayed. There's pending litigation. We refer to it commonly in the legal department as the Rhode Island case. And we're involved too in some litigation too that involves some of the federal funding as a city, or at least as some of the recipients of some federal awards in some instances. We continue to offer guidance and assistance when asked by different departments about specific things. We also continue to work in regards to different immigration issues, and just let everyone know, though, that we're staying abreast of the situation and work where we can, navigate where we can, negotiate where we can. And but yeah, this is a pretty good summary of the overview. I'm sorry, I was trying to log in on my phone. I've got a dead brick in my hand right now. To identify those specific 3 executive orders that are primarily applicable to the work OHS does. So if you have a chance, you may want to look at those. They're very informative of what may come into play as we continue to navigate this situation.
All righty. Hello, good morning, y'all.
Morning.
So I met with many of y'all in different spaces through the work over the years, and also we had the retreat recently. So good to see you all again. But for those that don't know me, my name is Alyssa Fernandez. I am Director of Permanent Housing at Oasis. And as of last September, I became chair of this committee. And I have to say it like that because the very name of the committee is in question as part of the discussion today. I'll be talking with the general membership about it next week, but wanted to talk with the council about where we're at. So Allison, in the overview of the federal changes, is updated pretty thoroughly, and how that could and does impact us. Part of the executive orders that this current administration has put out specifically targets DEI as something no longer allowed to be associated with federal programming, is how I'll put it. Obviously, that's a concern for the COC committee that I'm chair of, that's explicitly about the diversity and equity efforts. So the committee already had some plans going, including a training that's already been paused. On an almost daily basis, there has been more and more concern from various people in the community about having this particular committee and how it could impact all of our millions of dollars in funding if we don't comply with what these executive orders appear to be telling us to do. And I know OHS has done some things already as far as taking the pledge into consideration and our charter and some of the language there, but I'm here to update as far as the committee. Yeah, I've had to learn a lot about politics and law these past few weeks that I usually did not think I'd have to. And we also don't have the advice of HUD technical assistance that was mentioned earlier. So these threats have become very real across different sectors of the nation as far as funding and staff. So with that, as a committee, we came together, had a few public meetings to make plans that would mitigate the most risk that we can from these things that we can foresee happening. We've already had talks with various groups of people, including the CAB, and that's just based on the timing of when these meetings are. So I'm meeting today because that's when the meetings are, and I'm meeting with the general membership next week. But here's where we're at and what we're proposing. So one is to suspend the Equity and Diversity Committee. Of course, it's a great pain to say that, as I became chair, because I'm passionate about the work that we're doing. However, my understanding is that these federal executive orders take precedence over our local processes. And if we choose to do these things, can eliminate funding if we choose to have this committee and its work it's doing explicitly. So I think the work that the committee has been doing can go towards something new or already established group in the community if it wants, but outside of government or particularly the COC. So that's one, to suspend that committee. And then number two is a new committee idea that we've come up with. So committee members, when we were discussing these changes, we brainstormed on, okay, if we can't do this kind of work, what else can we do that's still helpful towards the homelessness community and be use of our skills as in advocacy and collaboration. We just still have a lot of passion to bring. So one of the things that came up was to create a new committee that addresses strategic plan goals. So we had that retreat talking about the strategic plan that's about 3 years or so, but I think also in that meeting, we recognized there was a few gaps that maybe still wasn't addressed. Not having a committee specifically dedicated to working on it, or things that require new initiatives, new alliances, but don't really know the who, what, and where of how to do it, or things that are already going but need to be done or have more ideas to be done more efficiently. So particularly the new name that came up with was Initiatives Efficiency, but that's a working title. We also have Unity and Opportunity out there. So we all like this as we felt it was good and necessary work for the community. Some of the things that was outlined was to establish and track metrics, identify and address gaps, explore creative resource streams, and consult on community needs and concerns. All of that came from language in our strategic plan that already exists. So like I said, we all liked it and felt like it was something good that can move forward. So we're going to talk about this idea more with the general membership and see what we come up with. And then I'll be back to propose these changes to the council. As far as suspending one committee and starting a new one. So more to come, but that's the updates that I have for now, and I welcome your questions or feedback that you have. Thank you.
Thank you for the work that you and your committee have done for the HPC and the Continuum of Care. For me, diversity and equity are very important values. And as much as I would never want to risk the funding that we get to do the work that we do, I do feel a grave concern about, walking back suspending our committees, walking back our values in the face of an administration that just seems to want to, sow divisiveness in this country. Like I said, I will, in any of these cases, I'm going to vote to do what the best thing for the continuum. But I feel that, like we're walking back things that we were going to have difficulty bringing back forward. But again, I just wanted to thank you and the committee for the work you've done.
Yes. Thank you for that, Jamie. You could go ahead.
So I want to first thank you for all the work you've done thus far and the challenging road ahead. I appreciate your grit. In my life, I have often struggled to find words to really describe what it is that we do and what I do. And so as important as words are, they don't always work anyways. So you can call what we do whatever you'd like, as long as we're still in it. So thank you. I appreciate.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. And Pastor Handy.
Kudos for this deep work that we've been doing a long time in this country. But the words have changed. Understand that everyone is a season of pivoting. And the reality is, if we continue to do the work on the auspices of some other language, the work is still being done. And how do we find ways to redistribute the work in an innovative way, because we're stuck in a system of institutional thinking. And what we need in this season are innovators who are strategic not only in thought but also in action. So continue to do the work. Language is critical, but we've been doing this work in many of the communities I exist in. DEI was not the language we used, but it was the work that we were doing. So learn how to pivot in a season where governmental agencies may also pivot around language, because it's a new season. Whether we like what was done or not, that's not the issue. The issue is, how do we become more effective and efficient in the work, because we are a collaborative, resilient people. We have always been. How do we continue to do that work in a steady, grace-filled way?
Amen. Thank you.
Are there any more statements or questions or concerns, discussions? So I do want to echo every sentiment around this table. It's beautiful to hear the support. And I want to say we completely support you, Alyssa. We want you to remain a chair. And throughout the suspend, the revamp, the transition, whatever it looks like, we're here to support you and stand behind you in this effort. And however it looks for us all to make it happen behind the scenes and work together. So I just want to leave you with that, and also thank everyone else for your comments as well. Oh, you could go ahead, Ms. Wallace.
Okay, yeah, and I also want to echo, thank you for your work. I also,
Yes.
for the sake of homelessness, I just want to make clear that we will follow the executive orders, despite our misgivings and heavy hearts in doing so.
Agreed. Well, thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, and then downsizing homeless planning council. Is there someone on that? Strategic plan, retreat follow-up. We do have it in our packet. Okay.
So I'll speak a little bit that, downsizing the HPC was a recommendation from about 2.5 years ago. So I don't feel as though this has been something that we've been aggressively attacking. It's just the one last thing that we have not addressed out of all of the recommendations that HUD made 2 years ago when they re-engaged with us. And it was 2 different sets of HUD TA that made that recommendation, so not just one. And so we had a brief work group with the Continuum of Care, and their comments should be in your package. And that was about a year ago, almost 8 months ago, so that was June or July. And then because we have a lot of work that we're trying to conquer at one time, we don't get the luxury to just focus on one thing. So that's why there's some time that's lapsed before we were able to get the to get the retreat together, because we wanted to make sure that this body had the opportunity to chew on it as well. So you have notes in your package as well from that recommendation. I think in looking at The documents, there was some research done on what like-size cities, sister cities, as our council members would call them, the size that they would typically have as a governing body. And the retreat, what we really kind of hammered out some key details here. You'll see it here. I know this information just went out yesterday or the day before, so I don't want to move to have a movement on any of this without you being able to chew on it for a little while, and more information will come. But I think that, those recommendations were made based on attendance, and as we have several pieces of legislation that's out there, bills that created this board, and then a new bill that was recently, I don't have that information in front of me, that was recently introduced that caused our council members to not be able to vote while on the committee. So you'll see some really key points that came out of that retreat. I felt like we worked really hard. Also, executive committee really just last week, 2 weeks ago, last week, really hammered out some key points here, and taking all of that information into account from the two work groups, the COC, the retreat, and then executive committee chewing on this as well. I think what we recommended was going down to 15 voting members, and because there's 25 members total, 3 currently are appointed by the vice mayor, 8 are appointed by the mayor, and 15 were appointed by the general membership, Continuum of Care. And so they looked at across the board doing an attrition of scaling back. So you'll see that information here. Across all 3 of those appointing or electing bodies. And so I felt like that was really great progress to have something that we could put together to share with the Continuum of Care at the general membership for next week's meeting. And then maybe identify 2 work group sessions outside of the normal meetings so that public comments or, open it for much more of a deeper conversation that blends all of the parties involved, whether it's the chairs, whether it's the Homeless Planning Council, or the Continuum of Care general membership, so that, and maybe getting some information from the mayor and the vice mayor as well, so that we can have a work group session where we can hammer some of this out. I feel like this has kind of been a thing that's just kind of been hanging out there for about 2 years now, and would like for us to move forward on at least forming the work group sessions, and we can send some dates and information out. But I think that sharing this information with the general membership next week, next Thursday, next week, and then from there hammering out 2 work groups, and I think that that should hopefully get us where we need to be and moving forward with this, so that we won't have to keep discussing this going forward, because we got a lot of work to do.
Okay, good deal. Any questions, discussions, thoughts? Nobody? Okay. Strategic plan retreat, and retreat follow-up, apologies. So, we have this in our packet, as well. Get to the page. Yeah, thank you. So this is from the, is this in everybody's packet? Mm-hmm. Okay, so the piece of paper you need looks like this here for the notes for strategic workout sessions. So going, I guess, objective by objective in the strategic plan, this took place on February 7th, 2025. And so we went from an angle of healing and strategy. And so objective 1.1, bringing in potential partners that are already doing the work, the ability to show our work and assisted calls to action. Part A, is there a committee tasked with systemic barriers, elevating the barriers and creating mechanisms to dissolve the barriers? And Part B is going to be positive increased involvement, engagement with people with lived experience into all COC committees and initiatives, which we've been working with that throughout the entire, I think, the good 2 years that we kind of been working on this particular strategic plan into the revamp. Part D, create public collaborative systems resource map with input from all committees, which I feel like we'll be able to dig into that with this upcoming all chairs meeting and general membership as well. How we engage it with the larger community and stakeholders outside of the COC. And someone would also love to hear about the progress on the mapping as well, so keeping people updated along the way with the work. Objective 2.1. And if you could just kind of go back and see the titles, which that's 2.1 is identified inventory. Need to plan to publicize, transparently communicate inventory results. Look at unified housing strategy plan to coming out to examine 30% AMI units. How do we sort people into this complex system? Create a training for service providers that shows the various pathways and processes towards housing provision. Increase collaboration with the planning department. We need to operate from love and compassion. Lived experience cohort has a ton to add here. We can help navigate as peer supporters. Okay, and still objective 1.2. Inventory of resources should include both within and outside of HMS. How do folks access those resources? Is the process equitable? And is the process coordinated or siloed? Part B of 1.2, is there language or process to prepare people with lived experience to make sure they feel included? Part C, can we get specific? The how. Incentivize LIHTC developers, private equity co-op models, and shared housing. Objective 1.3, and again, without me being able to kind of coordinate, I think I could go find it. I'm gonna just go ahead and name the, just short of trying to look for each objective name. But we need contingency plan on deck for potential federal changes in order to protect our consumers quickly and efficiently, which every bit of this is everything we just talked about in this meeting. The HMIS system itself needs improvement in functionality and modernization to be able to use the data results quicker and more efficiently, which that sounds like CTI being inserted kind of in that manner. But great progress in getting more HMIS participation and use, but now need a system improvement. And how different is this from objective 2.3? How are we laying HMIS data on top of other systems, public health, reentry, immigration, to identify solutions? We need to be open to change. Please note VIASPA that does work. Is the aftermath. I heard Standards of Care Committee mention the follow-up for shelters. Should we add specific language around research reporting to make it clear to the community? And then objective 1.4, we need more input from people that's experiencing homelessness. Identify and publicize the challenges and barriers associated with finding housing based on data from PIT and inventory counts. Collaborative and interactive community meetings to mobilize people at the neighborhood level. We need more units for 0 to 30% AMI. How do we measure and celebrate the wins and mitigate the challenges? Part A of objective 1.4 is build out this section. How do we ensure this? How is it being monitored? Who's responsible for updating approved language? Add language specific to elevating and dissolving barriers based on metrics. Promote this resource. Last page. Actually, hold on.
Madam Chair, can I just ask for a point of privilege here? we can read these ourselves, so I guess my question would be, what is the next step and goal versus us reviewing the notes that we already accomplished from the retreat?
Right. Actually, I was en route to that because it's the last page and it's speaking about who and what are we missing. But really next steps, just to answer your question, is this going, like I said, into general membership and also the all chairs meeting as well, to continue to process this into the entire CLC. So that's the end goal, but we are developing strategies solely for funding. We already have need to identify gaps to take to funders. And I'm reading this because the people out there cannot see it, so just to, be able to let them have that for the record as well. But who or what are we missing? Shelters for single fathers and people on the registry, youth and family strategies, plug HPC members into committees, connect the dots across the sectors, expand scope of standards of care committee, needs to be used, enforced, and have buy-in, reinforce community level work, timeline maps, gaps, recruit more stakeholders starting now, get agency boards involved, and CLC anti-discriminatory policy, which we just discussed, but we'll figure out in the revamp about that one. So we'll move along to transition of collaborative applicant and payment of people with lived experience. Is that gonna be Ms. Allison?
And while Allison comes up, I might just quickly add that at that all chairs meeting, I've been working on creating a tracker to be able to work with the chairs so that they can directly update whether it's on track or off track or things like that. So we're waiting for input on the chairs and we're hoping to get that information at that meeting. And if you're able to attend, it might help us sort out, what metrics might be helpful and what goals might need to be in terms of timeline.
Thank you. And you had something.
All right, transition of the collaborative applicant. I am pleased to report that in HUD's eyes, OHS is now the collaborative applicant. And it only took us 15 months. So very long process. I will continue to thank Susie Tomey for really walking through this with us.
Continuing to walk with us?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. We really appreciate you, Susie, through this whole thing. But so, that has been transitioned. The transfer of the grant has been signed by everyone that's needed. So that's a good culmination of something the COC general membership voted to do. And I know that this was touched on at the last meeting, but you do have a document in your packet about payment for folks with lived experience since the collaborative applicant has moved. The collaborative applicant and the funding that came from the planning grant, obviously went to MDHA before. They were able to use that to pay folks with lived experience, which is a HUD best practice. Once the money moves into Metro, things are a little bit different because now we're no longer under MDHA's rules for the money, but we're under Metro Finance's rules. OHS consulted with legal, with technical advisors, multiple technical advisors, with HUD. We put a question into HUD to ask, the Metro Charter really does not allow anyone to be paid for anything that has to do with being part of a Metro board. And that includes committee work. And so we reached out to all of these folks to say, what are creative solutions? How can we do this? We spent months and months and months on this. But we're bound by Metro Charter and this is a Metro board. So it operates under the Metro Charter. So anyway, all of this is explained, I think pretty thoroughly in this form. But I'm happy to answer any questions you might have. All right. Thanks.
Thank you for that. Okay, and so story of progress is going to be point in time count, Mr. Rico X.
So we've talked about a lot of hard stuff today. It's heavy. I think it's uncomfortable. But I will also say that, oftentimes when we are in uncomfortable positions, there can still be growth in that. And to Pastor Handy's the spirit of his words, there can still be innovation. Last month, we were way over time, and so I opted not to share this, but I shared it in the executive committee meeting, and I was encouraged to share this story. So one thing I just wanted to say as it related to the point of time count back in January is that this was my second time doing this, and more so just like wanted to publicly, state my appreciation and thankfulness for the Office of Homeless Services, and particularly the outreach workers that are out in the communities on a day-to-day basis. Whether that be, identifying people that may be experiencing homelessness, making them aware of the resources that are out there, but more importantly, just making sure that people feel seen and heard. And so my experience, we were in the Hermitage area, and publicly wanted to acknowledge Miss Lakeisha Davenport. She does amazing work in this field. And one of the things that was striking to me is that as we were riding around the whole time, and again, we're identifying people, we're seeing people and doing this survey and that sort of thing. But the whole time she was like, I'm trying to, I really want to see this. I really want to see this gentleman, and I apologize for forgetting his name, but he, is out there and it had been kind of living with another young lady, and so she was telling the story about the fact that the Saturday before the point in time, the lady that he had been kind of living with had unfortunately passed away, and since that point she had not seen him out. And so the whole time she was just so preoccupied about just seeing if she could find him to just give him a hug. And so we were in the process of doing some surveys with some people that she hadn't seen before. And so as my group was finalizing those surveys, I noticed that there was a gentleman who was kind of off to the side of the store. And so, I told Lakeisha, I was like, well, I'm gonna talk to this guy over here. He looks like he may have been housed. And so I just wanted to, approach him. And so when she looked in that direction, it was the gentleman that she had been looking for the whole time. And so she gave him the biggest hug. They both cried. And I think that those are the moments where the point in time count is the ultimate intention of it is to provide this data snapshot, but the reality of it is that this is not just hard work, but it is heart work. And I think the other thing that I just really observed with that experience is that when you go in groups, it also creates an opportunity where you are able to get an extra set of eyes. So Lakeisha kind of knew where her normal spots were, but as we were riding, a few of us in the car were like, well, wait a minute, we see these cars over here, let's go there. And so we were able to identify about 8 new people that she had not come across, 6 of which she, had already identified that, would qualify for different resources or services. And she was able to create a platform to where, we could follow up with them. So again, I just want to publicly thank the OHS team, not just those that are, here with us, but those that are out in the field on a day-to-day basis, serving our community. Thank you.
I just want to piggyback on Rico regarding Lakeisha. So that's my district that you were in, and I sincerely appreciate you. The individual that you spoke about has, I believe, in speaking with Lakeisha, has since left Davidson County. The only thing that was keeping him here was his significant other that passed away. So tough situation all around. One thing that I want to note, though, is that the point in time count does not get an accurate depiction. I have so many people that live in cars that are not counted, that live in Hermitage. That's not only just Hermitage, that's all over Davidson County and beyond. So anybody that's watching that needs to know that while our count may depict a certain number, that number is extremely higher.
That's completely real. And I just want to say to that point, that's exactly why we need our council members here on this board, because we do have experts in them. And thank you, Rico, for that story. Thank you, Lakeisha Davenport out there. Beautiful for that love. And our meeting is adjourned. I can't believe we got this jam-packed agenda done at 10:01. So thank you all for your work.
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville Network. If you would like to see this presentation again, or for more information on this and other programs, visit nashville.gov.